Hello, Miss Monson's class. I am Tristan Beeman, and I have for you today the original. First, we'll be reading the original "How the Tooth Fairy Solved Her Problem" by a very talented writer. All right. Once there was a little girl named Tiffany. She had lost a tooth that night, and she saw the Tooth Fairy. She asked the Tooth Fairy how she could keep all the teeth. The fairy said, "I need help." "I can help you," said Tiffany. "That would be so kind of you," said the Tooth Fairy. So they ran through some ideas, but they didn't work. So Tiffany said, "Do you have any ideas?" The Tooth Fairy said, "I do." "What are those ideas?" asked Tiffany. "Well, I will need a bigger cupboard." "Tiffany, time to go to school," said her mom. While she was at school, Tiffany thought of a solution. She couldn't find one. So after her homework, she told the Tooth Fairy. She got out of her little house, which was in Tiffany's new fairy house that she built for the Tooth Fairy. Then they brainstormed some ideas. "Here are some ideas for the cupboard. Make it with special fairy wood. Is there any other way?" asked Tiffany. No, no, said the Tooth Fairy. Tiffany had asked this because she had never seen fairy wood before. So the next day, Tiffany and the Tooth Fairy set off to find fairy wood. They couldn't find anything. So that night, Tiffany asked the Tooth Fairy, "How hard is it to find fairy wood?" The Tooth Fairy said, It's really hard, actually," said the Tooth Fairy. "Oh no," said Tiffany. "It's going to be really hard to find fairy wood." "I know," said the Tooth Fairy. "So where are we going to get fairy wood?" asked Tiffany. "I have a few places we can go and try to find fairy wood." So the next day they went to find the fairy wood. They couldn't make before Tiffany's mom called her for dinner. "I guess we'll have to do it tomorrow," said Tiffany. "I guess so," said the Tooth Fairy. So Tiffany went inside to eat dinner and made the Tooth Fairy's dinner too. She needs dinner too. Then both the Tooth Fairy, excuse me. Then the Tooth Fairy said, "The only way is to cast a spell on you to make you a fairy," said the Tooth Fairy. "Okay," said Tiffany. "And then we can get the fairy wood?" "Yes," the Tooth Fairy said, "but only then. Okay?" "Okay," said Tiffany. "And," said Tiffany, "we'll have to wait 3 days to do it." "Okay." "Wait, 3 days to do it, okay?" "Okay," said the Tooth Fairy. "But wait, why?" asked the Tooth Fairy. "Because we're doing other stuff," Tiffany said. So after 3 days, they both went out to find the fairy wood, and they found it! A few weeks later, the Tooth Fairy had a new cupboard. The end. A very, very nice story indeed. Now I'll be reading my adaptation of the story. Uh, Here's my cover. All right. How the Tooth Fairy Solved Her Problem. Adapted by Tristan Beeman. Once there was a girl named Tiffany who lived in the town of Monroe, Washington. Tiffany was a very, very nice girl. Didn't argue with her mother. Did her chores, turned in her homework on time. She was raised very well. One day while doing her homework, sitting at her desk, the papers had folders neatly stacked on the side of her desk with a pencil sharpener next to them plugged into the wall. As she was completing her assignment, she felt a strange feeling in her mouth. She searched around with her tongue and felt her lower left molar was loose. So Tiffany started playing with it, and eventually the tooth fell out. "Wow! My tooth fell out!" Tiffany says, excitement flowing through her voice. As she was looking at her tooth with awe, she heard a loud whoosh in the corner of her bedroom. "Who's there?" said Tiffany, startled from the noise and shaky from the potential intruder. "I've been waiting a long time, Tiffany," the intruder said mysteriously. "I've been waiting a long, long time for that molar to fall out." Tiffany was incredibly confused. Why would they want my tooth? Tiffany thought. After a moment of silence, the intruder walked out of the darkness and was much larger than Tiffany thought. "What are you?" Tiffany asked. confused and scared of who or what was in her room. "What do you want from me? Take what you want and leave. I won't tell anyone. Please, just don't hurt me." The adrenaline flowing through her body was so strong she could barely talk. The room was getting colder as she anticipated more and more. After a moment of waiting, the being finally turned on the light. What Tiffany saw was a beautiful winged woman standing before her. "I am the Tooth Fairy," the winged woman said, staring at Tiffany with a welcoming smile on her face. "I've come to get that tooth from you. I have money for that tooth as well, Tiffany." "Wow!" said Tiffany, excitement replacing the fear she was feeling. "You're everything I envisioned you'd look like, Miss Tooth Fairy." Tiffany opened her hand to expose the molar she had lost, motioning it to the Tooth Fairy. "I must ask, though, how do you keep all those teeth?" "That's exactly what I was about to mention, Tiffany. You see, I have a cupboard that I keep all my teeth on, but I've ran out of space. I need your help with building another one," the Tooth Fairy said, looking at Tiffany intently. "I've been observing you, Tiffany. I can see the potential you have to help me. No other child could be trusted with such a task." Tiffany felt incredibly honored by this offer. "I can help you," said Tiffany. "I knew I could count on you," said the Tooth Fairy ecstatically. "I don't know where to begin. Do you have any ideas, Tiffany?" "I don't really know either, Tooth Fairy. We need to think of something quick. There can't be much time," Tiffany replied, taking charge of the situation. So they brainstormed for a while, both silently trying to think of a solution to such an issue. "Do you have any ideas, Tooth Fairy?" Tiffany asked. "As a matter of fact, I do. We need to build a bigger cupboard." "Tiffany, time for school!" Tiffany's mother called from the kitchen, startling both Tiffany and the Tooth Fairy. They hadn't realized how much time had passed, and before they knew it, it was morning. "Dang!" Tiffany exclaimed. "I didn't realize it was morning. We'll have to discuss this later after I get home and get done with my homework." Tiffany had an idea to build the Tooth Fairy a little house with some supplies her father had after school. That way she didn't have to travel far to get to Tiffany. Plus, after it was done, Tiffany would have a little fort to go to when she had friends over. So when she got home, she immediately went to building the house. She was lucky she didn't have any homework that day, so she had lots of time to build it. When she was done, the Tooth Fairy came back with a big bag of teeth she had collected throughout the day. "What have you been working on here, Tiffany?" the Tooth Fairy asked, curious to what was happening. Meanwhile, Tiffany had an eager look on her face, excited to give her the house she built. I thought that I might help you out and give you a little place to stay until we solved your problem," Tiffany replied. Pride was in her voice for she was proud of herself for building such a thing. "Oh, Tiffany, you shouldn't have. You're so kind. I knew I'd choose the right person to help me with this." Tooth Fairy was very excited. Now she didn't have to travel as much. But in all seriousness, we need to figure out how to build that cupboard. I'm running out of space in my bag. So they started brainstorming some more ideas. Time was passing by so fast, they were going to run out of time if they waited any longer. Then the Tooth Fairy got an idea. "I have an idea," said the Tooth Fairy. "We need to find this special fairy wood. Only that will be able to hold so many teeth." "Are you sure there isn't another way? I mean, it can't be easy to find fairy wood just anywhere," Tiffany asked, worried at how hard the task may be. Come to think about it, Tiffany had never even heard of such a thing. "I'm afraid so, Tiffany," said the Tooth Fairy. She was also worried. She knew how rare fairy wood was, but she knew it was possible to get. "We'll have to start searching for it tomorrow. It's getting late. Thankfully, it's Friday. We'll be able to search this weekend." "Okay," said Tiffany. "Let me introduce you to my mother and father, though. That way they know you're a friend and not just some strange winged intruder." "Okay," replied the Tooth Fairy. She had never met a child's parents before, so she was nervous to do so. But thankfully, Tiffany's parents are very open-minded and never judge anyone. They admired her wings, made her dinner, and went to bed. The next day, Tiffany and the Tooth Fairy set off to find fairy wood, a task they both knew wasn't going to be an easy one. They searched the nearby forests and the trails surrounding Monroe. They couldn't find any so far, so after a long day of searching, they decided to head home. "Geez, how hard is it to find this fairy wood anyways?" Tiffany asked, tired and stressed from the long day of searching. "I never said it was going to be an easy task. Now we can't give up. We'll have to keep finding this fairy wood, Tiffany. I know we can do it. You're a smart, determined young lady, and I have all the faith that we can do this." Tooth Fairy replied with a very motivational tone. She knew that Tiffany could help her. She wouldn't have chose her to help her if she didn't. Well, do you have any ideas where we could find this fairy wood? I mean, there obviously isn't any Monroe, as we saw, Tiffany asked. You could tell she was starting to lose faith in this. I have a few places in mind, Tooth Fairy said. There's a place in California, a place in Oregon, and there's a place up in the mountains near Monroe. Tiffany and the Tooth Fairy were very eager to travel to these places, but they were out of energy. So they ate dinner, socialized with the family, then went to sleep to prepare for the big day they had in store tomorrow. The next day, they both woke up early. They decided to check the mountains first. Nothing. Then they went to Oregon. Nothing. The Tooth Fairy used magic so they could travel to these places within a short amount of time. Then finally California, where they finally found the fairy wood. They couldn't take any home. They had no idea why. So they decided to pack up and go home and brainstorm some more. After a day, the Tooth Fairy finally figured something out. Tiffany, I found a way to get fairy wood, Tooth Fairy said excitedly. That's great, Tooth Fairy, but I can't help but ask, why can't you just get it yourself? Why do you need my help? Tiffany asked. She was so tired of looking, she was starting to wonder why would the magical Tooth Fairy need her help. There's a lot of fairy wood, Tiffany. I need 2 pairs of hands. Plus, I have a big reward for you in the end, replied the Tooth Fairy. She understood why she would ask such a question. The only way we get fairy wood is if I turn you into a fairy. Sounds amazing, Tooth Fairy, Tiffany said. She was very, very excited to become a fairy, something she had always dreamed about. Then we can get the fairy wood? Tiffany asked. Yes, Tooth Fairy replied. Okay, Tiffany replied, but after 3 days, okay? Okay. Wait, why? Said the Tooth Fairy. I got a lot of stuff to do. I got a busy schedule, you know, Tiffany said. She stuck her nose in the air in a jokingly way towards the Tooth Fairy. Okay, the Tooth Fairy said, confused. After 3 days, they went out to find the magical fairy wood in California. After the Tooth Fairy turned Tiffany into a fairy, of course. After a few weeks of building, the Tooth Fairy finally had the new cupboard she needed. She rewarded Tiffany's hard work with $1,000. Tiffany and the Tooth Fairy hugged, and they lived to be best friends. The end.